all the USAID systems have been taken offline. You
Correct.
can't actually go and get money to fulfill contracts.
Correct.
Even though the Secretary of State ordered that it be turned back on for some of these programs.
Correct. And what also happens is you have to get a specific waiver for a program, and all of those experts who help provide the evaluation of, does this program fit within the exemption that Secretary Rubio announced, are no longer there and working.
So what are you hearing about people in the field, the beneficiaries of aid? How are they being impacted?
Well, it's devastating to communities that rely on American assistance, particularly in humanitarian context, refugee camps who depend on aid for food, water, shelter. So there's immediate impacts on those who are in greatest need around the world. And of course, our partnership with communities and other governments to deliver essential medicines or training to farmers, as I mentioned, or women's entrepreneurship, actually an initiative started during the first Trump administration. Those are all on hold. And so not only are there direct impacts on people who are hoping for and relying on American generosity, our credibility has been undermined by the fact that we've done this abrupt stop.
American credibility.
Yes.
How many people do you think will lose their jobs? Americans will lose their jobs because of this?
We estimate in the thousands. There are American citizens all over the world who help partner and provide this assistance. And it's not just that they're not able to provide it, that their security is a bit in question, where their phones are turned off and they're not able to reach their communities. Some of the security of our American citizens working abroad is a concern, because they're not able to communicate with headquarters, and they need to be able to travel back to secure locations. So a lot of these incredible workers are in harm's way. They're some of the firefighters running into burning buildings. And unfortunately, this abrupt work stoppage pulls the rug out from under them.
Do you think that the Secretary of State knows and understands this?
I think he is seeing the real-life impacts of this work stoppage. He is rightfully requested a review. We understand that when a new administration comes in, they're going to have different priorities and want to bring it into alignment with the president's foreign policy. We firmly believe that after a review, they would see that there are some programs they're going to want to stop. They've been very clear about what they don't want, but there's a lot of what we are doing all over the world that they're going to want to continue. Mm-hmm. Our dire concern is that those programs, implementing partners, are going to be gone before the 90-day review is completed.
Why would they be gone?
Because they're going to go out of business. These NGOs can't float the American government for 3 months. They don't have large reserves. They don't have endowments. They are going, quote, paycheck to paycheck, and rely on American assistance to do the work that they're doing.
So an example of one of these waivers Secretary Rubio issued was to PEPFAR, the president's effort to help combat HIV and AIDS around the world. What you're saying is, even though waivers were signed that said, give out antiviral medication, those drugs actually can't be handed out?
We are hearing inconsistent reports. It is, even though the right words were said and the intentions clear, work orders to resume work and handing out those antiretrovirals have not come to so many. So there are drugs sitting on shelves, ready to go to communities, but no pharmacists or nurses to administer them.
But what are other examples that Americans may not be aware of in terms of the work done abroad by some of these organizations?
There are community workers that help try to keep fentanyl from crossing the border. There are trade missions that help provide the route for American investment and create markets for American goods. This is all what foreign aid does. I think there's a huge misunderstanding and mischaracterization of what foreign aid really is. And it does, in so many ways, serve American interests. That's why there's been a bipartisan consensus. Republicans and Democrats for decades have supported foreign aid for these reasons.
As a national security priority.
Exactly.
Secretary Rubio told reporters, if some organization is receiving funds from the U.S. and does not know how to apply a waiver, then I have real questions about the competence of the organization, or I wonder whether they're deliberately sabotaging it for purposes of making a political point.
We absolutely do not want to make a political point. We want to save lives and help and improve the situation, and as much as we can around the world. I don't think it's fair to say that that just because the system isn't working, we're not able to using it correctly. The people that NGOs relate to at USAID to submit waivers, to get questions answered about whether this program would fit within the waiver, are not able to answer their phones, not able to answer their emails. So we're trying, but the system is not working. And as I mentioned, even those NGOs that have a resume work order in hand go and try to get the assistance, and that assistance isn't coming through.
What do you think the impact is on national security? Because skeptics or supporters of this will say this is about increasing efficiency. It's a temporary review. We could pick it right back up without damage.
Well, the problem is, for example, the assistance that flows through the NGOs that we represent, as I said, can't float the U.S. government for 3 months. They will go under. They will not be able to just pick back up and hire all those other people. And more permanent will be the damage to America's reputation when we just sort of abruptly walk away. Even if we walk back in, that will be tremendously difficult. And look, I do think this administration has been very clear that they want to create, and view all foreign aid through the lenses of safety, security, and prosperity. And when we are monitoring and tackling diseases that, infectious diseases that could come to America, we believe America's safer. When we create markets for American products to be sold, we think we're helping America be more prosperous. When we are present and partnering in fragile places, it's less likely to have migration and also to create a vacuum where malign actors might fill in. So we believe fundamentally in that it's representative of the best of American values. We also see foreign assistance as playing a vital national security role.
So the first wave of this impact is on U.S. government employees and contractors. But what I hear you saying is there's like a second wave to this, and that is the people who work at some of these charities around the world or here in the U.S. You put that number at thousands?
Yes, I am hearing from CEOs.
Like, scope-wise, like how big a portion of our economy or how big of a portion of our employment in this country is in this aid space?
Oh, I wish I could give you a precise answer to that. I'm hearing from CEOs every day that are furloughing and laying off half of their teams, closing country programs. 2/3 of their teams are being let go because they can't float the American government for 90 days.
Do you think that this is being done intentionally or with malice?
I can't speak or want to presume what the intention behind it is. We do know, and we thought it was a good step that Secretary Rubio took when he broadened the waiver to include life-saving humanitarian assistance. Our challenge is that we're not seeing the reality of that implementation on the ground in terms of the assistance going. And it also, that waiver doesn't take into account the long-term economic growth programs that we do in communities all over the world, including initiatives that were started during the first Trump administration, as I mentioned, women's entrepreneurship, or the Development Finance Corporation, which helps private sector companies invest. We think this administration will want to continue those programs, but after 90 days, some of those implementers and some of those programs will be gone.
In short, it's not what they're doing, but how they're doing it.
Yes.
That's the problem.
I think it is a bit of both. We are worried that after 90 days, so much damage will have been caused to this that it'll be extremely hard to restart programs on the ground. We have no problem with a review. We do have deep concerns with dismantling the system before you do the review.
So your group advocates for non-governmental organizations, NGOs, who receive money from the U.S. government. What kind of work do they do?
Yeah, so Interaction brings together 170 international NGOs that do humanitarian relief in fragile settings all around the world, people who have suffered a natural disaster or escaping conflict, as well as organizations that promote economic growth, like training farmers or helping bring clean water or medicine, so that hopefully at some point aid won't be necessary.
And can you give us some examples of what's happening right now with the freeze that's in place?
The freeze has meant that there are essential medicines sitting on shelves with no personnel to help distribute them. it means that there are container ships full of donated food that are going to waste. It's a colossal waste of American taxpayer money as well as America's reputation around the world, we think, and is causing extreme harm to some of the most vulnerable people on the planet.
So without the U.S. helping to provide some of this assistance, who fills the void?
When America is there representing the best of American values through its foreign aid, we are able to close off space to malign actors. But when we take our assistance and go home, that does create a void that others want to fill. As we all know, China is very actively courting and working in partnership and delivering aid all over Africa and other parts of the developing world. We're very concerned that if the United States withdraws this vital piece of our foreign policy and our engagement around the world, that it will be filled by others.
For people in parts of this country and they hear money's going overseas, they say, don't spend it abroad, spend it at home. How do you respond to those folks?
I mean, at less than 1% of the budget, we think it has profound impacts for American interests around the world, as well as doing an enormous amount of good for the most vulnerable. Look, when we're present overseas helping strengthen health systems so that global infectious disease don't come here, we think Americans are safer. When we are helping open markets to American businesses, we think we're helping American prosperity. When we are present in partnering and closing off spaces for malign actors and creating stability, there's less migration. We think for so many reasons, this not only is the right thing to do, it's the smart thing and in America's national security interest.
Is anyone helping you turn this back on? Like, where's the solution here?
The solution. What we very much hope is, while the Secretary is doing a 90-day review, which we understand and agree with, that he allows current programs to continue so that you can properly evaluate whether it's something they want to continue or not, and so that there's not untold suffering and harm to America's interests abroad.
Do you know how many Americans will be impacted by this freeze?
So we're estimating right now around 10,000 and as much as 50,000 people who would be affected by this freeze, Americans who work on this.
10 to 50,000 Americans could lose their jobs?
Yes.
And the CEOs of these organizations are telling you that?
Yes, we are hearing about layoffs and furloughs and country programs closing, and it has been really devastating on the nonprofit community. Just, again, out of an intention to review, a pausing of everything while you do that review is unprecedented. We're hoping and expect that a review will take place, and we're ready to participate and support in any way that we can. We would love to talk to Secretary Rubio about that and help his assessment, but if the programs don't exist because programs or NGOs have gone bankrupt, we're not going to be able to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.